The hospital hallway smelled of antiseptic and silence, the kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. 8-year-old Lily Harper sat in her wheelchair near the window, watching children run across the hospital garden outside. Her hands rested quietly on her lap, but her eyes followed every movement, every step she wished she could take. Doctors had already said the same sentence too many times: there is nothing more we can do. Inside the consultation room, her mother Emma wiped her tears for the 5th time that morning while trying to stay composed. Across from her sat Drive Wallace, one of the most respected neurologists in the country. His voice was calm, practiced, and gentle, but his words still cut deeply. We have tried the most advanced treatments available. Her spinal nerve response is extremely limited. Realistically, recovery is unlikely. Emma nodded as if she understood, but her world felt like it was collapsing. But there must be something, anything. Doctor. Wallace hesitated before replying. Sometimes improvement doesn't come from medicine alone. Therapy, persistence, emotional support, those things can sometimes do what science cannot predict. Emma walked out of the room feeling numb. She had already spent nearly everything: insurance savings, borrowed money, even sold her small jewelry collection, to pay for specialists across 3 countries. Billionaire-backed medical programs had evaluated Lily. Experimental therapies had been attempted. Nothing changed. Lily still couldn't move her legs. Outside the hospital entrance stood Daniel Harper, Lily's father, holding 2 paper cups of cheap vending machine coffee. Daniel wasn't wealthy. He worked as a night shift mechanic, fixing delivery trucks and buses, often returning home exhausted. His clothes usually smelled faintly of engine oil no matter how much he washed them. But his eyes, tired as they were, always softened the moment he saw his daughter. Emma walked toward him, her face telling the story before she even spoke. Daniel handed her the coffee quietly. They said the same thing. He asked. She nodded. For a moment they stood in silence, watching Lily laughing at something a nurse had said. That laugh hurt more than any diagnosis. Daniel finally spoke, his voice steady but firm. Then we don't stop. Emma looked at him, almost frustrated. We've tried everything, Daniel. The best hospitals, the best doctors, the most expensive treatments. We can't fight something this big. Daniel watched his daughter carefully before replying. Maybe we've been looking in the wrong place. That night, while Emma slept from exhaustion, Daniel sat at the small kitchen table scrolling through therapy videos, rehabilitation forums, and research papers he barely understood. Again and again he saw one repeating idea: long-term movement retraining, muscle stimulation through repetitive guided activity, emotional motivation, and consistency. Not miracle cures. Not billion-dollar technology. Time, patience, and relentless effort. The next day he visited a local physical therapist who worked mostly with accident victims. The clinic was small, modest, and nothing like the elite medical centers they had visited before. The therapist, an older woman named Mrs. Alvarez, listened carefully while Daniel explained Lily's case. I can't promise she will walk, Mrs. Alvarez said honestly. But I've seen patients improve when someone works with them daily, really works with them. Most families cannot maintain that level of commitment. Daniel leaned forward. If someone did, every day, would there be a chance? She smiled gently. There is always a chance. That evening Daniel made a decision that frightened Emma at first. He reduced his night shifts, took part-time work instead, and converted their small living room into a simple therapy space using homemade equipment: rubber resistance bands, foam supports, wooden rails he built himself, and a used therapy mat he bought online. They couldn't afford professional daily sessions, so Daniel decided he would become the daily session. Every morning before school, he sat Lily on the mat and gently guided her through exercises Mrs. Alvarez had taught him. At first nothing happened. Her legs barely responded. Sometimes Lily became frustrated and asked, "Daddy, why are we doing this if nothing changes?" Daniel would smile and say, "Because one day something will." Weeks passed. Then months. Progress was almost invisible. Tiny muscle twitches appeared and disappeared. Emma sometimes worried they were giving Lily false hope. Relatives quietly suggested they accept reality. Even neighbors whispered that Daniel was exhausting himself for nothing. But Daniel kept going. He turned exercises into games, counting challenges, music rhythm movements, and reward charts on the refrigerator. On weekends he carried Lily outside and helped her practice standing between two rails he had built in their backyard. Most attempts lasted only seconds before she had to sit again. Yet Daniel celebrated each second like a victory. One rainy afternoon, nearly 9 months after they started, something unexpected happened. While practicing balance, Lily's left foot pressed slightly downward on the support mat, just enough to hold a tiny amount of weight for a moment. "Daddy, did you see that?" she whispered. Daniel froze, afraid he might imagine it. "Try again." She pressed again. This time it held for 2 seconds. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't jump. He simply placed his forehead gently against hers and whispered, "I knew you could." That night Emma cried, not from sadness this time, but from cautious hope. Still, she was afraid to believe too much. They had seen small signs before that never lasted. But this time something was different. Over the following months, those tiny movements slowly became stronger. Mrs. Alvarez adjusted the therapy plan, adding gradual weight-bearing exercises. Daniel stayed consistent every single day, even when he was sick, exhausted, or discouraged. Lily, inspired by her father's dedication, refused to skip sessions even on birthdays or holidays. 2 years passed. On Lily's 10th birthday, their small home filled with a few friends, a homemade cake, and quiet laughter. After everyone finished singing, Daniel knelt beside Lily's wheelchair and whispered, "Ready for your birthday challenge?" She grinned nervously. "With the rails." He shook his head. "Without them. I'll be right here." Emma's heart pounded as Daniel helped Lily stand. Her legs trembled, her hands gripping his shoulders tightly. For a moment nothing happened. Then, slowly, carefully, Lily moved 1 foot forward. It was not a perfect step. It was shaky and uncertain. But it was a step. Emma covered her mouth, tears streaming instantly. Lily took another step. And another. After 3 steps she fell gently into Daniel's arms, laughing and crying at the same time. The room erupted in emotional cheers, but Emma could barely hear them. She sank onto the sofa, overwhelmed, sobbing with relief she had held inside for years. Later that evening, Emma stood quietly in the kitchen watching Daniel wash dishes. "You did what entire hospitals couldn't do," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "No, she did. I just refused to stop helping." News of Lily's improvement eventually reached one of the hospitals that had previously treated her. Doctors invited the family back for evaluation, amazed by her progress. Medical tests showed improved nerve responsiveness and muscle activation that had once seemed impossible. During the final appointment drive, Wallace, the same specialist who had once said recovery was unlikely, watched Lily walk slowly across the therapy room using only light support. "This is remarkable," he admitted. "What treatment program did you follow?" Daniel smiled modestly. "Consistency." The doctor nodded thoughtfully. "Medicine helps, but sometimes the most powerful treatment is daily belief combined with relentless effort." Many families lose hope too early. Months later, Lily began attending school without a wheelchair. She still required therapy, and her walk remained careful and measured, but every step she took felt like a triumph. At a school event, she was asked to share her story. Standing on stage with her parents in the audience, she said something simple that left the room silent. "Doctors tried to fix my legs," she said. "But my dad fixed my courage first." Emma, sitting in the front row, broke into tears again, this time not from fear, not from exhaustion, but from gratitude so deep she could hardly breathe. She remembered the hospital hallway, the hopeless conversations, the nights she thought their family had reached the end of every possibility. She had believed the world's best resources were their only chance. She had not realized that the greatest resource had been sitting beside her all along, a father who refused to measure hope by statistics. Years later, when people asked Daniel how he found the strength to keep going when experts had already given up, he always gave the same answer. "I didn't try to perform miracles," he would say. "I just showed up every day." Sometimes that's all a miracle really is, someone who refuses to stop showing up. Lily eventually grew into a confident teenager who volunteered at rehabilitation centers, encouraging other children facing similar challenges. She never promised them instant recovery. Instead, she told them something far more powerful: progress is often invisible before it becomes visible. Effort feels useless right before it begins to work. And the people who stay beside you during the slowest days are the ones who change your life forever. Emma would often watch her daughter walking across the park now, remembering the wheelchair that once felt permanent. Every step Lily took reminded her of a truth she wished she had understood earlier. Advanced technology, expensive treatments, and famous specialists can open doors, but unwavering love and persistence are the forces that carry someone through them. Because sometimes the greatest breakthroughs do not begin in billion-dollar laboratories. They begin in small living rooms, with homemade equipment, tired hands, quiet encouragement, and someone who believes, long after the rest of the world has stopped believing, that the next step is still possible.